Yes, sir. Me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us. We have a great panel and lots to talk about, so let's get to it. Let's meet the media veteran from the Big 550 KTRS, Wendy Wiese, along with Mr. Bill McClellan from the Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from KTRS, rawstory.com, and the Riverfront Times. And there he is, Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American with his proud 9PBS mug. Hey, Bill, let's talk a little bit about a report that came out this week from the medical examiner's office. And, of course, we're talking about the death of Cora Faith Walker, St. Louis County official who died March the 11th in the Lowe's Hotel in downtown St. Louis. And folks, we're not sure what happened, but this week the medical examiner said that it was heart failure. And there were no traces of illegal or non-prescribed drugs in her system. People are wondering just in general how this story has evolved and the media coverage of it. What is your take?
Well, I thought that it was a tragic story, and I thought the media coverage was what one would expect. I mean, when a very prominent, young, seemingly healthy person dies in a hotel corridor in downtown St. Louis, and the only thing that the people know is this was after a party and she had spent the night in the hotel, of course the media is going to say, what's going on? And I think that like Lauren Traeger of Channel 4, who was really the leading voice early on asking questions. I thought that the questions were all very appropriate, and the story ends with Dr. Michael Graham, who's, you know, good as gold, saying that there was nothing here. You know, I mean, no, like you say, no drugs. This was a natural death, and I think that's where the story ends. But I don't think anybody in the media acted inappropriately at all. I thought that the mayor's dad, Vervis Jones, went overboard in his attacks. But then again, he's the mayor's dad, you know, and this was a friend of the mayor, so that was all personal stuff. But
right. Well,
that's what I thought.
You're right. I mean, and her star was rising.
Yes.
So, and it was such a it was such an out of season passing. You know, only 37 years old. But I still contend that. And I agree with you about Lauren Traeger. I think everything that they did was absolutely appropriate. But I think that in the ferocity of Vervis's response and reaction to it, and as I said at the time, I think it was his grief speaking, but I do think that extended the interest and extended the shelf life of the story.
I don't know. I could say that I disagree with that, but we really kind of don't know, because that makes it sound like it was kind of like vindictive, because you did this, I'm going to do that now. Media-wise, as we said on the show, I don't have a problem. It's a story that needs to be covered, okay? I thought editorially, in some aspects, okay, at the Post and some other places too, that it was a little bit overboard. Because I think if anything happened to us similar to that, there would be what happened to us. But I don't think our families would wake up and whoever our friends were, be they political, be they office holders, be they whatever, I don't think their names would be coming up in it. I just don't, I think that would have just been bypassed till they found out exactly what happened to us. So, and I also feel, and this is just me speaking personally, I feel as though there are people in the media, there are people in the social media world, there are people in different political circles that quite frankly are disappointed with the outcome, because they thought that this could be fodder to be used in some way against the mayor and others, and unfortunately, I honestly feel like that.
Well, yeah, I don't even know that I don't disagree with you on that. I don't, it's a tough situation. there were so many rumors. I mean, so many rumors that came my way, and I'm not really that as connected to that stuff as I might have been once upon a time. And I thought, wow, the town was buzzing about this at first. And I happen to have a lot of regard for Dan Isom, and when he started talking about it, I started really, you know, I really, and you talked about Dr. Graham on there. I really felt like some of the, and maybe for the reasons you're describing, some of the initial scuttlebutt was a little bit over the top. Now, it really didn't get into the media, though. I agree with you. The media, there's no good way to cover this story, and I think it was fine. And but at the end of the day, you know, it is over. I mean, you know, we need to remember the end, which is that it was a tragic death of a woman with a heart condition, and that's it.
Hey, Alvin, I want to ask you about the Arch Grounds in downtown St. Louis, now known as the Gateway Arch National Park, renovated to the tune of $380 million recently, about half of it private funds and half of it tax dollars that were raised locally to improve this national park. Well, the Post-Dispatch this weekend pointed out that actually, if you not only look at the attendance now compared to pre-pandemic, but also to like the 1990s during its heyday, there are millions of fewer visitors visiting this new park with the riverfront that's been redesigned. There aren't enough people selling food in the stalls. There aren't people who are going up in the arch and going into this new expensive museum. And now they have that lid across the depressed lanes, which is now Highway 44, I guess. And we thought that once the Arch Grounds were connected to downtown St. Louis, people would be just walking across. And yet they aren't. What do you think?
Well, I've always thought like the depressed lanes were kind of like, you know, like defund the police. And just, God, what a stupid thing, right? It just better words would have helped.
But wasn't it always great to hear in the depressed lane?
In the depressed lane. Oh,
I liked it when I'd be on as a guest. I always said the people didn't look happy. And I tried to do my own
I do think that we are still on the comeback trail. And I think the new Arch Grounds and going back to the Arch, there are some places that are just going to take longer. I mean, to ride up at the Arch is a small little deal, and if it's just you or you're, you know, one other person, you're going to ride with other people. I don't know that everybody's secure doing that. When you turn on a Cardinals baseball game or many baseball games across America, we know that people buy tickets to the game and oh, we are all into it. Boy, a lot of that red is like not Cardinal fans. It's empty seats. People aren't really eager to start getting back out there just yet. Let's come back after this summer and see, because this will be the first summer that's at least quasi-normal in what, 2 years? So let's give it a chance.
Well, you have, I mean, $380 million price tag. Okay, yeah, that's going to always attract some attention. But I am 1,000% with you, Alvin. It's like, thank God that the restaurants that are still trying to come back aren't held to the same, you know, standard. Well, their guest list or their waiting list is not what it used to be. The Arch is spectacular. The money had to be spent. It is the gateway to the West. It is a very important national monument with people coming in from all over the world. So give it time. I didn't understand the story at all.
Well, I can only say this. I did never believe that it was difficult crossing the street there, Memorial Drive, to get to the Arch. I thought that the lid over the highway was unnecessary, because I used to see, you know, Wendy, when we were working down at KMOX, we'd see little old ladies crossing the street to get to church at the old cathedral. They had no problem whatsoever. I thought that was a waste of money, but I'm looking at other parks around the country, and they're exploding. It's a big national story. National parks are overcrowded right now.
You can't
This is a national park.
It is, but grizzly bears don't have COVID. I mean, if you go to Yellowstone.
You can't compare Yosemite.
How do I know?
You can't compare Rocky Mountains to the Arch.
Why not? Well, you take 4 million visitors a year. I mean, this is a great
I also disagree with you, Charlie, about it was the ease of getting across.
It was not easy.
I thought it was difficult, and I thought when they put the dome across, I thought that'll help downtown people walk over for lunch. And the problem is you don't have a lot of people working downtown anymore.
Yeah, and I was going to say,
whether
Charlie,
it ever comes back, I don't know.
Exactly right. And plus, we haven't mentioned the C word, the crime problem, because that is still a big part of it.
And
Perception is reality.
And they just closed down Lenore K. Sullivan Boulevard after 7 p.m. because
Charlie,
of crime.
First of all, I suspect that the $380 million project was oversold in some ways, like most things
always are.
As they are in this town. I personally, from being there, think aesthetically it's way good. I like
it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and I think it's success. I think it's way too early to make a decision. I'm not positive that 2 or 3 years from now we shouldn't be saying this story may be ahead of its time. I think it's a little early to be passing the judgment. It's a fair question.
You would think once it opens, there would be an explosion of interest, and you'd be setting records.
I'm not joking when I say this. I think if we could find a way to shine the arch, to really give it a good, like, shining where it really gleamed, like when it was brand new, I think people would be drawn to it.
You know what I think they need to do? Because I was in Shenandoah National Park at this time last week. They sell beer, and you could buy 2 12-ounce cans of beers for $3.35 total.
That's
we need
great.
a beer garden underneath.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about that, a beer garden.
And you want, what about your pond? What about McClellan Pond? I thought there was
Shoto's Pond.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shoto's.
Yeah.
Right. I would prefer McClellan.
All right.
I mean,
let's move on. How about you? Let's see. We want to go to you, Wendy, on that's the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial, or was. Let's talk about the Jefferson statue in the History Museum at Lindell and DeBoliver in Forest Park. It's been reported by various outlets that there are now panels next to this statue explaining Thomas Jefferson, warts it all. He fathered enslaved persons. He bought the Louisiana Purchase. That's questionable. And so now visitors who see Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers, can learn the pros and the cons. Do you think that all statues, Ulysses Grant, Chuck Berry, and others, King Louis IX, should now have explanatory interpretive panels?
I think they should. And I was actually, when we had these conversations about removing the statues, I was like, well, let's just put up an explanatory panel. That sounds like a great idea. Now it seems like it's going to be pretty involved because, first of all, who's going to do the vetting? I mean, obviously he had 600 slaves, but there are other, we have anti-Semitic national heroes. We have, I think it's going to be very involved. And if everybody's okay with that, then that's fine. This was not the first time this happened, though, according to the article. There was a paradox of leadership or liberty, a display at the History Museum just 10 years ago. So they've freshened up the awful parts of his life. And I'm.
No, go ahead. Your question is all statues. This is a history museum. The idea of interpretive panels at a history museum makes perfect sense. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that every statue everywhere needs an interpretive panel.
But why not?
Why not?
Well, I don't think every statue everywhere needs a historic. I think in a history museum, it's perfectly reasonable and appropriate to be as broad and thorough about history and not, because a lot of times people think the real history is only the one side has traditionally been taught.
Victor.
I don't think if you're trying, I know a lot of people are going to try to broaden it into a politically correct issue and all that. I don't view it that way at a history museum.
I
get
see
that.
what you're saying,
And
but
so
as opposed to
one's saying-
removing, let me say, we removed the statue of Columbus in South St. Louis.
Which is fine.
We removed the Confederate
Confederates.
Memorial in Forest Park. I think the panels explaining, the exhibits would have been great in both cases.
I think the Confederate, I'm sorry, I put the Confederate memorials in their own bucket.
And that's kind of high. Like, I just think the whole slavery thing need be explained. And I know that different American heroes have different, baggage, but all I can speak to is the slavery aspect. And once again, if you haven't seen it, go see Hamilton, because Thomas Jefferson is explored in a way that most Americans have no idea, and this is based on fact.
Here's my only question, because it's been a very, very long time since I sat in a classroom. They are teaching Thomas Jefferson's passed in classrooms, correct?
Well,
yeah,
and
I
that'll
mean,
be coming to an end in a state near you.
I could speak to that. I said something to my granddaughter about George Washington, and she said, Coach, he was a slave owner, wasn't he? I mean, she didn't say, was he? I mean, she said, Coach, he was a slave owner. And I said, well, he was. I mean, so yes, they are teaching that.
Well, but I mean, of course.
I mean, it's appropriate.
Before the 13th Amendment was...
What kind of liberal school you send your kid?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think it's
my
commonly
granddaughter goes
Speaking
to
of
Avery and
schools,
Webster Road.
Ray Hartmann, now in the state of Missouri, and this is actually for the 2022-2023 school year, someone can make a donation to a not-for-profit organization and then get a tax credit, not just a tax deduction, but a tax credit where the income tax liability is reduced, and that money will go to parochial schools. It's being administered, as we found out this week, by 6 religious organizations. One is Jewish, one is Lutheran, one is Christian, another, maybe 2 of them are Catholic, something like that. Are you comfortable with this? Because I know for a long time you've wanted the separation of church and state.
We say, I wanted it.
Just
provided
Ray.
by the
Yeah, it was
just Ray.
No,
He's
he
the
was
only
actually
one.
you made a career. No, you've made a career of writing columns on this subject. Am I wrong?
No, well, I mean, I thought of it sometime. I'm trying to remember why I came up with the concept. No, I think that it's the
What you call it, the
idea
establishment?
of we have a robust and successful and wonderful private education system in St. Louis, for example. All the great private schools, including Catholic schools, some of the finest private schools. I've sent my kids to them. They're in public schools now, but they've been in both. I don't think it's mutually exclusive to respect the private schools and say that we need to keep public money out of private schools. And every one of these attempts to break that barrier down. I know she didn't mention Muslim schools, and as soon as somebody starts doing that, there'll be a different conversation. I just think keeping church and state separate is a very important thing for our country.
I'm sorry. I sent my kids to religious schools for 12 years, both of them. And I am in complete agreement with Ray. I'm very uncomfortable.
Oh, okay, well, I would normally be uncomfortable with this, but I think that it could be a really good thing for the city. I mean, in St. Louis, when the parochial schools were stronger, and, you know, they had nuns teaching, so it was very cheap to send kids there because the nuns didn't require a lot of money, the people wouldn't necessarily move out of the city when they had kids. They'd send their kids to parochial schools when the public schools were struggling, and they still are. And I think if we had a stronger parochial school system in the city, it will keep young families in the city. So I think in this instance, it's a good thing.
But people don't have the big families anymore. I mean, you're saying to assist families. I'm just trying to...
Yeah, I'm thinking that it'll strengthen the parochial schools,
Right.
Wendy.
Okay.
And
it
so
might,
I think
don't forget, you know, the students who are going to these, Wendy, are mostly, I mean, they have to be prioritized based on disability or
Correct.
income, and they have to be non-sectarian. In other words, they can't say only Jews or only Catholics in
Right.
school.
When you say
Right.
priority,
Don't forget.
they don't even have to follow the ADA. They're
And
actually not
they
subject
can
to the ADA.
they can discriminate against gay teachers. Is that my understanding as well?
Religious schools can.
Yeah.
Yes, but I'm saying that,
don't have to
well,
follow the
it may
ADA.
increase minority attendance at better schools within the city. I get that. Now, what's the biggest concern that I had was that the money will come from the public school system. Totally, absolutely against it. This is where politics comes in, and this is where I might have held my nose and said, like, I might have to vote for this. Because this money, while it is state money, is not a dime is coming from the public school system. So if I had to compromise, I think I could live with it, might be too strong a word, but hey, if you're going to fully fund public schools, then do this. Now, fear is, sooner or later, only a matter of time,
Camel's nose.
some nutty school is
Camel's
going to be
nose and
right. You
You
know,
can make a case for any one, like you just did, fine for any one case.
Right.
But the overall impact of this kind of thing, maybe call me, whatever you want to say.
No, I'm gonna call you right.
It's a
Slippery
separation
slope,
issue.
Yes.
whatever you want. And then to me, the red flag in this, when they made and maybe it was just the article, make a point, they don't have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act, and exactly why. And exactly why should they
But
not?
you can already do that
Why?
with a tax deduction.
No. But why should they not be why should they be exempt from the ADA?
But right now, there could be a private or parochial school that's a 501c3, and you can write a check and get a tax deduction. Now, this is just a tax credit. And there are food pantries, as you know, Missouri has a pretty generous tax credit for food pantries, many of which are run by religious organizations. So it's not like it's completely
We're talking
unprecedented.
about in education.
And Ray is right. Ray and Wendy are like 100% right. I like to think I'm maybe about 80% right. Yeah, but
What does that leave me with?
About 40.
If they're 100% right, I'm 0%.
I got you more in the 20s. No,
All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Bill, on Saturday night, everybody's going to be speaking to the St. Peter and Paul Homeless Shelter. And this is a great organization that is in Soulard, and they're expanding. They're going to try and raise $1 million and go from like 69 beds to 100. And you're the keynote speaker this Saturday. It's kind of coincidental, I guess. This is the week that St. Louis announced that it's going to remove 4 homeless camps, one at Cole and 44, another one down on River de Pere. And some people are thinking, how can you do this? They're doing it for health reasons. But some advocates for the homeless say, well, you're just going to be spreading whatever health problems you have around the city if you close these encampments. How do you fall on this issue?
Well, Tom Burnham is sort of the guru of homeless as far as I'm concerned. And he thinks that spreading it out's not necessarily a good idea. But we need to do something more than we're doing. And like you say, the Peter Paul Community Services is hoping to move their longtime shelter out of the church basement, the crowded little church basement, and have a new facility somewhere. And that's the sort of partial solution we need. I say partial solution because some of the people who are homeless don't want to go to shelters. And it's difficult to tell somebody you have to go to a shelter.
I mean, I agree. I don't have a solution, so thus any possible way to address this is fine. I just am not a big encampment fan. And it's odd because, like, advocates kind of make an argument that I disagree with. It said, like, oh, let's keep all of the, health problems together because we certainly don't want it spreading out to where I live. As long as I can come and write a check and do whatever, but I don't want it around me, so let's keep it all here.
Well, I've thought the ones down by the river, I mean, the old Camp Hope and everything.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, down by the river, it's industrial, you don't have a lot of homes there, and it's close enough to downtown where people go for services. So like the one out south by River de Pere, that's a problem because it's a residential neighborhood and you're far from services. But the encampments downtown, I mean, I would not be in a hurry to bust them up.
Okay.
I think Bill's in the 90s on this.
90% right.
That's 90% better than I was.
But the area around River de Pere, it sounds like they have had it with the encampment.
Alvin Reid, want to ask you about former Governor Greitens, who went on a police ride-along, and he actually tweeted about it, and then the mayor of Kansas City didn't care for it. This was with the Kansas City Police Department, said, no, he didn't have our approval to tweet. But I'm thinking to myself, you have a First Amendment right to take photographs of the police. We know that right now. Yeah. Protesters and everyone else could do that. He didn't have their permission, but he didn't need it, really, did he? You've been on some of these ride-alongs.
Yeah, I did. When I was in Illinois, first paper, I did a ride-along, and I really enjoyed it one night, okay? And a real quick story, like one thing, he got in the car, and he said, like, okay, here's a key. Now, if something happens to me or something happens, you start this car and you drive directly back to the police station.
Oh, wow.
Don't try to help. Don't try to whatever. And I'm looking at him like, don't worry. Right, okay. But no, we had permission and did a story. Eric Greitens, once again, puts himself in a situation that I'm bigger than law. I'm Eric Greitens. I can do anything I want to. And maybe he did, the police should have made that, firm and square to him, but I bet you they did. So I just
But two of the is that correct? That two of the police commissioners in Kansas City are Greitens donors or former Greitens staffers. So that probably that probably makes all of that clear. But no, I just have a problem with the crime rates, not just here in St. Louis, but in Kansas City, all over the place. To have a squad car used as a prop in any political commercial, to me, is I just think it's.
Who are we? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Eric,
who are we talking about?
Eric Greitens.
Oh, then it was a win for his campaign. That was a big win for him. And it's an outrage story. A lot of people upset. The cops are upset. It is another win for him. And that's the world of the Republican Party in 2022. The primary, it is a win for him in the primary.
This is not the first time he's gotten in trouble with a camera.
It doesn't matter.
However,
it's the win
as much
for him.
as you guys don't like Eric Greitens, what did he do that's wrong?
Well, he
didn't
wrong.
have
He did
permission.
plenty wrong.
Well, what did he do?
Well, because I mean, I think he clearly abused the.
Yeah, he didn't have permission.
But it
You don't
went
need
to
it.
He did.
No more than a protest.
No,
At a rally needs permission.
no.
The law
We're
is
talking-
clear.
No, he
You
was
can
on a
take-
ride-along.
He was.
ride-along.
The police gave him permission to do this, but not permission to
film it.
flaunt
No,
it.
the question is approval. He didn't get approval, but he doesn't need permission.
But he-
So
No,
you're
he does
saying
not.
it's easier to ask for
does not.
forgiveness than permission.
There you
You're
go.
proving
falls
my
underneath
point, though. He doesn't. What he needs is his name. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be talking about it because it's in the news. But I'm just saying he is every time he gets it, whether he's right
Every
or
time
wrong.
a bell rings,
I'm
He's
here
wrong.
to tell you
Eric Greitens,
that if this
he
was a
benefits from
Democratic
this.
candidate for office, you
No,
I disagree.
Well,
I disagree. If Cory Bush should do a ride-along, and if she did, they said, hey, you can do a ride-along.
she'd stop
Right,
with
gotta
but
have
then
the
it was
permission.
on a commercial. Like, see, I get along with the police. She'd be out of line, and I would say that.
Everyone is allowed to take a photo of police work in this country, and that's well protected by the law.
So I can walk into the police station and just start.
He's just trying to make them look.
Because
like
you were
they're
on their
police
property.
station.
When you're sitting in a police car and they gave you permission and you're not
just-
under arrest.
He's the law and order
Okay,
candidate.
hey, we're getting the timeout sign. Believe it or not, this great conversation is coming to an end, but you can write about it by sending your letters to 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, zip code 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and those tweets. We like that hashtag, DonnybrookSTL. And you can find us on your favorite podcast source. They would include Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. That's it for the first half, but don't touch that dial because in a moment, Dr. Michael Kinch from the Washington University School of Medicine will be joining Bill and Wendy for a conversation about COVID-19 and other public health topics. That's next. The rest of us will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.